Record. Welcome to the Magnetically Aligned Woman Show. Walk into your power through self love, self worth, and authenticity. Today, I have a very special guest. Her name is Jenna. Jenna is an intuitive and a medium, modern mystic, writer, and host of the Spark Intention podcast. She's been certified as a stress coach, a meditation and mindfulness teacher, breath work, and embodiment facilitator, and uses this knowledge as the foundation for her work. Now she has dedicated her life to working with women who hear the calling to embody their intuition and take their sacred life to the next level. Welcome, Jenna. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to have you because we connected like boom right off the bat. And for everyone who is new and new to you, would you go ahead and give us a little bit more information about how you even got into this type of work?
Oh my gosh, yes, sure. Okay, so first and foremost, I'm going to be shuffling cards and then I'll pull them and then we'll talk about them later. So if anyone sees me doing that, that's what I'm doing. Well, I got into this work. I fell into this work is a better kind of explanation for it. I grew up Catholic, went to Catholic school, K through high school. And it never really resonated with me. And I was really bad at religion class because I was asking too many questions. And then I just I was really bad at it. And I took a world religions class and it opened up my, in senior year of high school. And I went on this retreat and it blew my absolute mind. I had this meditation. I'd never meditated before. I didn't know what meditation was. And I saw my soul. And I was like, that was a really cool imaginative thing. And I just kind of chalked it up to my brain was just making, whatever. But that's where it started. The curiosity started. Because I was like, oh, okay, there's definitely something else out there that we can. And I started my first vision board. Senior year was a little bit of a pivotal point for me. But then I just kind of tabled it and I went through my life, a child of an alcoholic, and my dad passed away when I was 23 from addiction. And then the panic attacks, well, they didn't really start. I had panic attacks my whole life because I've struggled with my mental health, anxiety, and depression on and off. But they started nightly. And so that's when I really needed to get help. And I went to different doctors. I didn't know they were panic attacks and they just didn't know kind of what to do with me. So I went to 6 different doctors. They all took blood tests and they were like, there's nothing wrong with you physically. And I was like, there's something very wrong because this is not normal. And so I turned to alternative medicine and meditation. And I sunk back into meditation, knowing what I had experienced that one time when I was a senior. And meditation saved my life, really pretty blankly. And from there, I realized, we typically have this cycle of healing that we go through. So first we really focus on the physical. We're like, okay, I want to quote unquote eat right, whatever that means for you. And then I want to work out. And I was really good at that, really great at focusing on the physical. But then we're like, oh, my mental is very tied to how I physically feel. And so then we go into the physical. And then the more that you start to untangle the mental, the emotional piece is part of that as well. And spirituality is a side effect of healing. It's something that I think a lot of us fall into. We talk about oh, my spiritual awakening. Yeah. And it's from healing is really all it is. So however you get there, I got there through my mental and emotional healing. And then I was like, well, what do I do with this? I don't understand this. I'm a very scientific kind of person, so I wanted to understand it. And so I found a teacher, and it was for an embodiment practice. I didn't know what that was at the time, called Sensuous Wisdom with Denise Elizabeth Byron. And that was to connect me back to my intuition. And I was like, great, sold. I had no idea what I was signing up for, really. And then from there, the sacred sisterhood came in, and the practice of really getting in touch with my body on a spiritual level, which is something that I hadn't done before, and finding all the answers inside myself, and finding the clarity that I'd been searching for simultaneously while going through this process of like, I know I'm meant for more, but I don't know what that is. And that's something that I hear all the time with my clients. And that is the first kind of flag that like you want to come back to your intuition. So long story short, the modern mystic in me woke the heck up, and I'm really fueled by that curiosity. I don't claim to know what happens, after death or anything like that. I think it's audacious to think that we know. But I also think that there's a lot of peace that we can find in whatever belief that fills us and feels good to us and is our truth. And that's what I'm in service to. And I'm in service to people who want to connect back to their intuition and want that clarity. And the spiritual side of it will come as it does for you on your own path. I'm really focused on getting you back to your own intuition and feeling empowered to know that you do have the ability to know the next step, to find the next step, to move forward in your life and heal and feel good, feel happy, feel fulfilled right here, right now. It doesn't have to be somewhere down the road. It can be right here, right now. And so I'm really passionate about that specific aspect. So that's a long-winded answer, but that's the whole journey of how I got to being the modern mystic I am today. Modern mystic is just basically the person who is curious and always seeking knowledge of the mysticism and the mystical, and then discerning what is true for you. It might not be true for everybody, but my own truth.
I love that. I love that because, like, when you say it starts in the physical, it starts in the mind and the body. And I really relate to that in that aspect, because I think a lot of the times that's where we are most of the time. We're like here in the physical world, in the 3D, we're thinking about work, we're thinking about how we look, we're thinking about what other people think of us. And then it becomes, oh my God, this is all external, right? But what am I internally, or who am I internally? So when you mentioned that whole passageway from like mental to like physical to the body, and then it becomes emotional, and then it becomes spiritual. I find alignment in that path. I'm like, oh my God, that's me too. But it might be different for other people. But it really does take like I get it, it does take that healing to kind of awaken yourself and say, like, who am I and what do I want? Not what the rest of the world wants, but what do I want? And what am I here to do? Like you said, that there's something more out there, but what is it, right? And what is that for me? And that's one of the biggest topics here, right? Called the magnetically aligned woman. What does alignment mean for you? And so that's something very personal, and I want you to share. What does alignment mean for you? Like, what does it mean for your life? What does it mean for your business?
Yeah, that's a great question. Alignment with me is getting in touch with my truth, however that looks for me in the moment, in the present moment. And from that point, alignment is the whole duality of all of it, So it's like when I'm really in alignment, I'm not just focusing on the good feelings. I'm not just focusing on the happy thoughts or the whatevers. I'm also I'm seeing the whole picture. So I'm seeing the shadows, I'm seeing the depth. When we do a painting, there is both. You literally have to create the light and the depth with light and dark, right? You have to create both. And so it's taking that step back and having both on your canvas. And that's alignment to me, is not hiding from any of it. It's just seeing where you're at in that moment.
Thank you for sharing. Has it been difficult for you to kind of face um, what we normally call like the shadows, the negative aspects of life, and how that played into your own journey?
Totally. Absolutely. Short answer. Absolutely. Shadows are no fun. Not the heal. None of this is, I would say, fun. As far as healing goes, it's a lot of quote unquote dark nights of the soul. It's a lot of feeling raw and cracked wide open. The fun comes from the freedom you feel after you've felt that, after you've faced that thing. Um, the fun comes from the synchronicities that you start to become aware of. I feel like they're always there. It's just we're not necessarily aware of them. And then you're like, wow, this really feels like magic. Like and so that's the part that I think we all really resonate with, because we know that's the end goal. Or not necessarily the end goal, but we know that that's possible. Um, so in short, the difficulty is not knowing where to begin. So the overwhelm of it all, like, where do I even start to face my shadows? Where do I even begin to do that work? And then B, not dwelling in that space. It's easy to step into victim mode and be like, and focus on the shadows, especially if you're deep in the shadows. And if you're in an environment that keeps fostering and feeding the shadows, that makes it even more difficult to heal. And quite frankly, if we're living in a society and a system that keeps feeding that shadow, I don't know how to heal that, because that's not my experience. But I would imagine that it would be astronomically more difficult to find that healing. So all's to say that yes, it is difficult, but it's not impossible. And part of learning is to ask for help, is to be vocal about it, to share. I find oftentimes that the deeper I share, the less people shy away, because the more they resonate with me and who I am and my history and my story. And I was always afraid of that rejection. And that didn't really happen. And I think it happens for some people. But then you get to a place where, like, wow, that was so raw. I'm so proud of myself. Like, if you're gonna like walk away from that, like, that's fine. Like, it's not for you and you're not for me, and that's okay. Like, we're just not on the same path right now, and that's fine. And so just getting through those like fears is, I think, the biggest hurdle. But sharing is, I think, the first step. So getting through the fear of sharing, asking for help when you need it, sharing with a close friend is the first step. And then the lightness that you feel, like it's like a weight lifted off your chest when you kind of get it off your chest, that will propel you to keep going.
I resonate with that a lot, because the fears that stem originally, it's just this like perception. They say it's like, it's not real. Your brain makes it up, and we're so used to like kind of putting ourselves in this box. Like, if I was this perfect human being, and if I was everything that everyone else told me to be, then I'll be okay. Then I'll be okay. But then there's that like separation of like, but that's not really me, right? Like,
Mhm.
that's not really me.
Mhm.
And so the healing process is kind of unraveling all of that. Um, that the world that you've created and the world that you believe to be you, and really coming back to, that's what other people say I should be. That's what other people are living. That's dumb. but who I am on the inside, that takes a lot of work. And in my personal experience, oh my God, like going through body image issues, going through self worth issues, being told that I wasn't smart enough, being told like I wasn't going to make it in life as an entrepreneur. And all of these things, they kind of scar you, but we don't
Mhm.
actually notice how deep of a scar that can be because trauma affects people differently. Um,
Mhm.
and I know our main topic I want to kind of focus on today is like emotional resilience to heal self. Like, what does that exactly mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. Emotional resilience is your ability to bounce back from difficulties, from trials, from tribulations, and from the highs, right? So, emotional resilience is when we're faced with a challenge and we're like, wow, like that really stung or that really hurt. It's our ability to say, okay, I'm not going to dwell on it. I felt the feeling and I can come back to my center, to my equilibrium, to my peace. I do believe that our like equilibrium is peace and love, really. I just peace and love. It's so cliche, but really that is where our like natural state of being is. And so it's not about staying in that state all the time. It's just a matter of how quickly can I return to my center, return to my core, and not attach myself to the stories that are others and come back to my own truth and my own story. And however that was woven, however I decided to weave that story, right? And so that's the emotional resilience that we're creating, is it's not about me, right? So we have to learn that it's not always about us. Oftentimes it's just the projection of how somebody else feels that's being placed onto you in that moment of connection. um and then the humbling moment of, oof, that rubbed me the wrong way. So instead of saying, why is this always happening to me, saying, this happens, this is just life, this just happens. So what is it that needs to be healed inside of myself? So it's about the ability to self-reflect, to ask yourself those harder questions of like, okay, there's a wound here, there's a scar here that's deep that needs to be healed. It healed over, but it's not healed. And so the ability to do that digging, to have those tools in your tool belt to do the digging and to truly heal that, sometimes that takes, being triggered often by it, until you've like worked through it and you've worked through all the layers, because there's layers to it too. And so it's moving through life and creating that emotional resilience. And to me, that is purpose. The emotional resilience is the purpose. It's working through anything that's wounded you so that you can truly be at your center. And the self-worth is tied to that, because when you know yourself, when you know your truth, when you know who you are, it's unshakable.
Yes. Yes. Would you be able to provide us like a personal example or like a example that you see very often of how people show up when they are wounded, especially with the self-worth aspect, and how it reflects from a more empowered state after the healing?
Totally. You can see this a lot in relationships, whether it's friendships or partnerships with a significant other. So, and I said this on the podcast, like everyone is coming with like a Santa bag full of their own crap to the table in every situation. Like we're all carrying this like bag of our stories, our perception of reality. So you'll often see this in miscommunication. So somebody will tell me something, I will interpret that with my lens of reality. You are going to interpret that with your lens of reality. And so I'm looking at that, I'm like, wow, she was so rude. Like okay, great example. Great example. A man came up to my door. This is true story. A man came up to my door on a Segway, He comes up to my door. I'm living in my childhood house right now. And we live in a very nice neighborhood. It's like, anyway, he comes up and he goes, "Hi, clearly you're not the owner of this home." It was clearly you're not the owner of this home, but is the owner home? And I was like, clearly. I was like, what? Oh. And I was like, no. Because he was asking basically if we were looking to sell the home. So he's like, clearly you're not the owner of the home. Is the owner of this home? And then he said, are they willing to sell the home? And I was like, no, we're not. And I was like, I was so offended. I was like, oh my God. I was like flustered. I was like, what does that mean? Like, clearly, like what, blah, 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 blah. And so he like scoots away and I close the door, and that is a perfect example of something where I was triggered. My self-worth was triggered. It's like, why can't I afford be in a wealthy neighborhood? Because I was always the kid in the private school who didn't have the new shoes, or who was like, I was around so much wealth, and then the identity became, I am working class and I'm freaking proud of it. And that became my whole identity. And my story was that I was always the less off kid, so I wasn't worthy of the same wealth as the people I surrounded myself with. And he brought that right. He like literally scooted up to my door, knocked on it, and was like, here's your story for the day. Like, here is your lesson for the day. Bless him, wherever he is, bless him. But that's a perfect example of where we can decide, okay, what the heck is wrong with that person? Blah, 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 blah. And go into that chatter, and then feed the story that has been wounded, feed the wound rather than healing the wound. Or we can say, oh, first of all, that was really random. Like, what just happened? Kind of laugh it off, and then laugh at yourself for being like, you got so triggered there. You got so triggered, Jenna. Like, what was that? And then go into the question of, what was that? And then I was like, oh my gosh, I never even thought about this. But the truth of the matter is, I'm right now healing my worth. And he just gave me the brilliant opportunity of healing a layer of that worth. And worth is financial, it's physical, it's mental, it's emotional, not being good enough, So anyway, also say that's a great example of like when you're with a stranger relationship of like, and then whatever he brought to the table too, of like his perception of reality was that, I don't know, I could not, clearly I was not the owner of this home for whatever reason, and maybe he just meant I looked really young, I don't know, but yeah. I saw it as, I don't look rich enough for you. Like, I was like, I want to go into a whole explanation of how like I have a home, but like, so I was, anyway, that's the story.
Oh my goodness. I love that. Oh my God. And it happens all the time. It happens all the time. And then, and I say it so like with gratitude too, right? Like we have to show gratitude for the experiences that we have, because these are opportunities presented to us, even though they're unpleasant, for us to kind of say, you know what, like, thank you for showing me that, because now I can move forward and not and not reacting, right? You could have just been like, let me tell you, sir. And instead you said, well, thank you, we're not selling at this moment, have a beautiful day, right? And not blowing up in front of people and transferring your energy and that type of energy onto others. And that's our Santa bag. It's like throwing our gift at them, like, boom.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like, oh, you meant this teddy bear? Like, yeah, like, oh, you meant this? Well, have at it, And I think And then we lighten that load as we move through those things, and we bring less to the table, and we come at it with a fresh pair of eyes and a deeper perspective of like, okay, this is a new situation. This is a new person. And he could, if I didn't have any story around that, if I wasn't carrying it on my back, he could have said that to me and I would have thought nothing of it, you
Yeah.
know? So it just depends on your perception. And that's the point, is that, you know, when I work with clients, they often think that we're going to be focusing on these really big monumental things that happen in their life, and we will. And I want to hear about those little minute details of your day, because that is actually where a lot of the growth
Yeah.
is in those little tiny moments where you got triggered by your coworker, or a conversation that happened, or there was a miscommunication with your significant other. I want to know about that, because those are the opportunities to grow. They don't have to be like these huge things. They can and often are, because something brought you to me, right? But it's in those little things too, and we don't have to disregard those. We can bring purpose. And I don't believe everything happens for a reason. I think that things are at random sometimes, but I do believe that we can find purpose and give meaning to everything that happens, and that kind of brings the power back to us and our choices.
Interesting. Because I'm on the side of I do believe everything happens for a reason.
Yeah. 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 And I really respect that. For me, I was like, I can't, I don't want to believe, really. And I can't believe that all of the abuse that I went through was something other deciding for me that that pain needed to happen, right? Like, the truth of the matter is, my grandfather had a choice to take his abuse and abuse my dad. And then my dad had the choice to take that abuse and then abuse me. And I had the choice to say, it ends here. It ends with me. And I made that choice. And so I think that that is where that, like, everything everything that happens, I can find purpose in. I can
Mm.
heal from this, and I can be different, and I can do different in the world than those who came before me, and heal my lineage in that way.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. That is a very nice
Yeah.
perspective. Yeah. Because I always say you have the choice, but I didn't think of it backwards. Like your parents had a choice, your friends have a choice, and whether or not they chose it, right? But I also think like it's our job to, not really our job, but like I think, because we're so aware, it's our responsibility to kind of share that with the world and let other people know, even if it's just a small little thing like, hey, I don't appreciate you treating me this way. That kind of
Yeah.
sparks something in the other person, like, oh, I must
Yeah.
have done something. And that self-reflection aspect of it. And because we're coming to the end, I want to share some tips with the audience, like for those who do want to go a little bit deeper. Where would
Yeah.
you start, or where would you suggest they start? Like the top three things.
Sure. Number one, curiosity. Get curious about yourself and get curious about why you do the things you do. So when something comes up, get curious. Okay, where is it happening in my body? What am I feeling? What are the feelings I'm experiencing, or what are the feelings I'm feeling? And then the second thing is, have a tool, whether you write it down, whether you dance it out, just getting things out from the body and onto something else to move it through is really, really critical. And then the third part is, find a practice that helps you connect back to your center, whether that's meditation, again, whether that's a walk in the park, whether that's dancing, whatever it is that helps you. Baking, a mindfulness practice is so critical to this work, because then you'll be able to learn how to focus on single pointed awareness, which is critical when we're learning to watch our thoughts and not attach to them. And so those are three ways to start. And then you can deepen into a meditation practice. But I find when we just like sit down and we start meditating, we get really turned off, or we get really scared by it, because we haven't really built up any habits to support that way of being. So build up those habits first and then move into your meditation practice. You'll
Thank you.
feel a million times better, like a
I can
million
see
times
that
better.
too. Trust me, I get what you mean by that because like when I was told to concentrate, I was like, there's no way. My mind is like in 80,000 places.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's like our conditioning too, right? Like to multitask. Like we're so, it's so I don't know, like rewarded for like multitasking and doing all of these things and hustling and blah 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 blah. Um, and that's just supporting like chronic stress. So
Yes. Can you read the cards that you drew for us today? I can't wait.
okay, so I was shuffling as we were doing this. And the first was the Queen of Wands. So this feels very much like where we began this journey, where we began the story. Wands is a fire card. She's sitting on the lion. She is like big empress vibes here. Okay. And then we have the Fool, beginning of a journey. There's a light, jovial feeling to this new era that we're stepping into. There's also, you know, the excitement of something new. And then we have the King of Cups. So deep creative energy here. You're the master of your emotions.
Thank
Emotional
you.
resilience. Yeah. And then the last one is against, oops, this is from, first of all, that was from the Divine Feminine Tarot deck by Cocorina. This is Sacred Rebels Oracle by Alana Fairchild. And this one's against the grain. You have to do things your way. Your way is the way for you. So all of these tools, take what resonates, leave the rest, then move on. Take what resonates, leave the rest. It's not for you. That's okay. You have to figure out how you're moving in the world. We're in the age of Aquarius. It makes so much sense. The world needs your specific way of doing things, nobody else's. And that's also very Queen of Wands energy, but you have to take action. You have to take inspired action. None of this matters if you don't actually act on it. Okay. So that's the that's the reading.
Amazing. And I know other people would love to connect with you too. And you have a little something for the audience. Can you share that with us?
Yes. So I do full moon circles. And so the freebie is that you'll get a ticket to the full moon circle, a full moon horoscope, and then there's an embodiment practice. It's a movement-based practice to integrate that full moon magic the morning afterwards. And that's called Activate Your Magic. And that's something that I've embodiment practice that I've created. And so you'll get a ticket to that. The value is like, I don't even know, it's like $60 or something like that. So you'll get a free ticket to the full moon circle and the morning after embodiment practice. And where to find me, the best place is Instagram, Jenna with a little period, Monaco, like the country, no affiliation, Monaco. And that's the best place. And then my website's www.jennamonaco.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Jenna. And for everybody
Thank you,
who
Nikki.
has tuned in today, I will leave Jenna's special little gift in the link below so you can check her out. And yeah, it was fabulous to have you and to share your wisdom and to be in your presence.
You
And I
too.
just want to leave it there.
Yeah. Thank you, Nikki, so much for this opportunity.
You're very welcome. And everybody else, I will see you guys on the next episode. Bye.